Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Are Finally Podcast Episode 6. I'm Rasen.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Mike.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
I am well, thank you.
Yeah, so Zach brought in one of his home dogs, which I think is the proper terminology that you guys use to refer to one another.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's home dog one.
Okay. There we go.
We
So,
don't talk about number two.
so, are,
We
so,
don't.
so Zach, are you home dog prime or?
No, I prefer home dog zero actually.
Oh, okay.
So edgy.
Yeah, we got badass over here. Anyways, so we've been doing things. This is, as everyone knows, We Are Finally Podcast is actually a subtitle. We were actually known as the Marvel and Dark Souls podcast because that's all we ever fucking talk about. So we're gonna be here back again with you to talk about the latest in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Netflix original series and the latest in Dark Souls. So yeah, but before that, I guess we'd might as well go ahead and just talk about what's everyone up to. So, I've been doing some fun things other than playing Souls games, actually. I recently picked up Enter the Gungeon, which is a fun little roguelite top-down shooter thing. Very similar. It's kind of like a mix, actually, between Binding of Isaac and Nuclear Throne. Pretty fun little cute game. I highly recommend someone out there who's interested in that sort of thing go and just pick it up. Been spending a lot of time with that. It feels, honestly, it feels not very luck based, to be honest. Like, I've never really been upset, at least yet, with the drop rates or anything like that. I've never really felt like I've gotten completely fucked over in that game yet. It feels very skill based, which a lot of roguelites have a problem balancing out the RNG versus the actual player skill level. So it's really fun. I think it's a very well designed game. Probably going to be in my top 10 this year. So yeah, check that game out. Also, too, if you want a little adorable plushie thing, they have a merchandise store where you can pick one up, and they'll also give you a Steam code to go along with that, which is pretty neat. But yeah, other than that, I ordered a tablet actually. So I've always kind of been one that's like, why the fuck would I get a tablet? I have a phone. And then I was reading Berserk, which is a little famous manga series out there, and I'm just like, I want to do this on my phone. Don't really want to do this on my computer. I'm going to go check into Kindles. And I was looking at Kindle stuff, and I'm like, if I'm going to spend this much money, might as well get a fancier Kindle. Then I was looking at what fancier Kindles can do, and I'm like, fuck it, I ordered a tablet. So within like the span of 30 minutes, I decided I was going to get a tablet, and it's coming in the mail. So looking forward to that. And then I played Demon's Souls. So that game's fun. I'm probably actually going to do a video on it, so I'm not going to touch on it too much, but it's very interesting to see where From Software kind of came up with the Souls formula and how it works, and just seeing what they kind of threw at the wall and what stuck and what they decided to cut out. That game is really weird, but in a good way. Like, it's probably, of the Souls games I've completed, it's my least favorite, but I love that game a lot. Like, it's probably one of the weirdest 10 out of 10s I've ever played, just because there's a lot of shit in there that just don't work, and they decided didn't work, and they cut completely. But I appreciate that they attempted it.
Yeah, I definitely agree on Demon's Souls. It was the first Souls game I played, so I have kind of a soft spot for it in that regard. But I think it's probably my least favorite. But it's like least favorite of a series that I love every game in. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels in a lot of ways like Mega Man. Like, that's kind of the thing I kept going back to, because it reminded me as a kid of the time that I was on Heatman stage in Mega Man 2. I'm just like, well, fuck this disappearing tile trap shit. I'm just gonna go beat this boss so I can get the item to just skip that completely. And in a lot of ways, Demon's Souls was like that, where I got stuck on, like, a boss in, like, 2-2 or something, and I'm just like, well, with this item I got from 4-1, that made that boss fight trivial, so just a lot of going
Yeah.
back and forth was really fun.
Yeah. Demon. Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I remember Demons doing that a lot. You could straight up skip. What was it? 2-3. Skip the entirety of 2-3 and jump right to Flame Lurker.
No, it was 2-2 was the
2-2. Yeah.
yeah. And that was actually, that boss gave me a lot of trouble. And something actually I'm not very used to with Souls games is, like, that fight almost kind of requires you to have some sort of magical damage output, because its physical resistance is just ridiculous. And, like, at least from, like, Dark Souls and Bloodborne, You can kind of go into every boss in that game without changing your build up too much, but to have a boss that's just like, no, you kind of need this sort of damage type if you want to get anywhere, or else it's just going to be a slog, kind of actually impressed me, because like it made me kind of get out of my comfort zone a little bit, which for a Dark Souls game, that's first of all saying something, because that's kind of the status quo as like discomfort. And it went even further than that. It's just like, no, fuck you. Just get a completely different weapon. Just find one somewhere. And I'm like, okay. And I did. And yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, well, the first Dark Souls kind of did that too. And Sen's Fortress, when you encounter your first mimic, you get a lightning spear from it. Right after you get that, you're in on Orlando, and everything has really high lightning resistance. Kind of screwed the player, but everybody wanted that spear.
Oh yeah, I remembered that. I never really like. I'm really weird with my Dark Souls ones playthrough. Like I've played that game a lot and just experimented with builds, but the playthroughs I always finish. I'm always just pure strength or like pure dex, and I never really fuck around too much with the elemental stuff in that game. But I probably should. I want to do a pyromancy build of that game, which I've always messed around with, but I never quite finished for whatever reason.
My first playthrough of Dark Souls 1 was a sorcery build, and I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Don't worry. I've done strength and dex builds since then.
So you're a true fan.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. No. Oh my God, Magic and Demon Souls is so cool. Like I played around with it a little bit, and I'm just like, ooh, this is, man. They totally didn't. They threw this in and didn't play test this shit, or they didn't have the time or budget. But no, even like well, at least the only spell that I really got because I felt like I needed actually was when I was still stuck on Flame Lurker. I'm like, I'll go grab the Water Veil spell, which kind of actually makes that fight also a joke because it's primarily fire damage, and like I think it like cuts it down to like 1/10 of the damage you would take. It's pretty ridiculous, and it lasts for quite a long time too. Yeah, but also actually, so just going through like game FAQs and various forums just to find some details and bits about some of the intricacies of Demon Souls is hilarious because you find a lot of great stuff, like people talking about the first like tutorial level or like just getting out of it and going into 1-1, and like they're saying shit like, oh, you might as well just spend some time and grind up like 10 levels because you're gonna need it. And like going through now, having played like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and like a bit of Dark Souls 2 and going back to that, it's just like, oh, this is really easy for a Souls game. And like it's really funny how like the skill has kind of like they've kept ramping it up, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about Dark Souls 3 later. But yeah, actually Demon Souls, it's really weird because I still feel like I'd recommend Dark 1 for a new person who wants to get into the series, but I think Demon Souls is just easier because they expected a little bit less of the players.
Yeah.
Because it was the first one of its type.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it helps that if you have the time and you want to grind up for some resources, like, about half of that game's bosses you can completely cheese with glitches, which is hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Though, the one thing that I really liked about Demons, and I see how they kind of implemented that into Dark 3, the bosses seem to be more gimmicky, whereas like what was the guy's name, the old hero in Demons, he was blind, so if you move too much he would know where you were, and that I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I love that fight actually. That was one of my favorite, that and actually the the Storm King, I think his name was. That's like up there for me in terms of Souls bosses now, just because like I love the gimmick of that fight, and also like kind of just this is me looking back on it, obviously, you know, hindsight's 2020, but kind of this weird sort of I'm fighting giant sea thing right now when I shouldn't be, and kind of just that tiny shade of Bloodborne made me a little excited. And it clearly wasn't supposed to be like a Lovecraftian thing or anything, but I was just like, hey, that's funny. But yeah, I got no more to say about Demon Souls really, unless you guys do.
No, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. It's definitely a really good game, but its age does show.
Yeah.
Oh God, too, the budget shows through. Well, first of all, the fact that it's an early PS3 game shows, and also the fact that that game was made on a budget shows that, oh, it's so janky, I love it. There are multiple times, there's like, I think I have about 3 instances that I recorded, where I just fall through the world because I rolled wrong. It's really weird. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I think one time I went up on an elevator and the elevator went through me and I just fell. And that one confused me. I don't know if I have that one recorded or not though, but yeah, there's some
Oh,
weird shit in that game. Uh, but yeah,
yeah,
it's still a goodie. They tried, damn it.
they did. They did.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a recommendation from Waft, Demon Souls. Stay
Did you
tuned.
know this podcast likes Souls games?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we've ever talked about him before. So yeah, stay subscribed to my YouTube channel if you want to hear talk about the good old 2007 games. I don't even know if it actually. Yeah, I think it's 2007. Whatever.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Are we
Around
fact checking?
there.
Okay, no. Yeah, fuck it. Whatever. We're staying true to our word. Damn it. It's
Fact
2007.
checking. This is the
Yeah.
podcast where I said we were definitely getting the old Hunter's physical disc over here.
Oh yeah.
That happened.
Good times. We've never lived that one down.
And that's the Bloodborne Ultimate Edition.
Yeah,
Good times.
I was so sure it was coming over here.
So you know what else is hard?
What's hard,
Justifying the
Russell?
Punisher's crimes.
Oh,
So Daredevil season 2, am I right?
yeah,
Ah,
So yeah.
Daredevil.
Well, let's start off with our guest. So, Mike, I've heard that you have watched Daredevil.
I have.
Okay. Actually, have you watched Jessica Jones too?
I actually just started that a few days ago. I'm on like episode 7 right now.
Oh, I was about to say I also started that a few days ago, but like I literally finished the first episode and then stopped. So, the first episode was really good though. I'll continue watching, but yeah. So I mean, we all have some level of experience, quote unquote, with the whole Netflix original Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, Daredevil season 2 came out since the last episode. We all finished it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's a thing we can talk about. I'm gonna stay. Well, actually, like I guess general impressions. I think from what I've both seen and heard, this is probably the weakest of the three so far.
Mm.
But like the highs are really high. It's just
Yeah.
that there's a point where it kind of trails off.
Well,
Yeah, okay. So I didn't really pay attention to like any ads about Daredevil season 2 other than the Punisher. I knew the Punisher was going to be in it, and that got me super pumped. The Punisher is my favorite superhero ever. So that was like an instant sell. I thought like I had no idea about Elektra. I just thought it was going to be Daredevil versus Punisher. And I watched the whole thing, and the first 3 episodes was everything that I wanted. But then after that, it was kind of a downhill thing. But yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like the first 4 episodes. Like the first 4 episodes kind of make this Punisher arc, and just like that scene in the 4th episode where. Also, by the way, this is going to be full spoilers. We figured that like most of the people that care about spoilers at this point have finished it, probably. So if for whatever reason you fall into the category that cares about Daredevil season 2 spoilers and you like haven't finished it yet, yeah, we're just going full on board with that. But yeah, like that scene in episode 4, I'm pretty sure it is, where like they're just talking in a cemetery for like 10 minutes. I thought was fucking phenomenal, and I loved that
Yeah.
shit. And
one of
then
the best scenes.
yeah, and then like it kind of lost me a little bit after that, and then Stick showed up again. And I was like, fuck yeah, Stick. And then like it kind of lost me again, but not so much. Like I feel like that like episode 5, 6 to 7 gap was like where I was kind of the most like and then when I feel like when the Elektra stuff picks up, like there's a lot to like in there, but it's definitely not as thought out as the Punisher stuff. I just feel in general that 1 was such a well put together and thought out show
Yeah.
that I feel like maybe in season 2 I feel like almost maybe it kind of has the problem that a lot of the movies do, where they're worried so much about setting up future stuff maybe that they kind of lose track of the present, and things get a little more unclear than they probably should be. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
weird.
My biggest problem with it is that like there's nothing really in there that I would say is bad. I just feel like this should have been two separate seasons, and that
Same.
the whole like Elektra hidden ninja stuff, it was interesting, but it was so completely different in tone than the Punisher stuff
Yeah.
that it was really jarring going from the two storylines. They really didn't like. It's okay for a show to have two ongoing plots, but they need to at least feel connected in some way, if not storyline wise, at least thematically and tonally. And I just thought it was really jarring going from the Punisher stuff to the Elektra stuff, and I really would have rathered them focus on one or the other.
Yeah, the moment when Karen walked into that one scene where like all the ninja bullshit is happening, and Stick's just like, yeah, he's right in there. That's my Stick impression, by the way. But the war, Maddie. But yeah, like that like it felt like a crossover was happening within its own season. Like, because it was just so, like, Karen shouldn't be here. A bunch of ninja bullshit is happening right now. Like, Matt is the one connecting Ty, and it's really weird.
Yeah.
And, like, I also, too, I know part of the whole thing with the Elektra subplot is, like, oh, well, she's constantly dragging Matt away from the Punisher thing, and, like, you know, that's kind of causing tension and all that. It just kind of became a little bit annoying after a while, because it's like, no, just focus on the Punisher shit more, because that's a lot more interesting to see, actually.
And the dynamic between Daredevil and Punisher is really good, and we get that like those first few episodes where like I wanted to see more interaction between Matt and Frank.
Same.
But we got barely any.
Okay, so he totally knows that. Like, they never explicitly say, but the first time they meet, I'm like, okay, he has to know.
Yeah, I mean, in his interaction with Karen in the restaurant, he's like, let's talk about the lawyer and not, you know, the other guy. And Karen's like, what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I completely forgot about that, but yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I kind of, like, would have liked to see kind of just Matt and not Daredevil, if that makes sense, just, like, the interactions between those two, because to some extent too, Matt has to kind of bullshit his way around and be like, well, I don't really condone vigilante, you know, like that would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, man, I feel like the general impression of the season is that like, yeah, it's good, but it could have been better.
I know a lot of people actually were like, oh, the second half just sucks. I don't really think it sucks. Like, I was more positive on it than I think a lot of people were, but, like, it's kind of disappointing. It's hard to explain. Also, too, actually, you know what kind of bothered me? So, like, I know they kind of probably felt obligated to do so, but the moment that the Punisher shows up in the final episode and shoots, like, 3 ninjas and is like, see you around, Red, I'm just like, okay. did we actually need to? Like...
I've seen people really, really praise this scene, but I thought it was a little too on the nose when he sits down and looks at the newspaper that's like, Frank Castle is dead, and it's got the Punisher skull.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a little too on the nose. I don't know.
Oh, actually, you know what the worst actual thing is? Fucking, yeah, you can be a journalist. Okay, I'm gonna write my first thing in generic word editor that's called, I think, like, word editor or whatever the fuck it had on the screen. And then she just breaks out the middle school writing style and just like...
It was really cringy.
What is it to be a hero? By Karen Page.
Man, I wish I could just walk into an office and get a job like that, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like, I was, so, like, I've been, like, dabbling in some, like, journalism classes just from, like, what I'm, like, kind of the path I'm going down with my college education and all that. And just, like, as soon as, like, she got 3 sentences in, I was just like, oh, oh, this is no. Like it was like I'm not the best writer out there in the world, but I was like, I feel like they could have gotten like Johnny from down the street that like kind of helps out the newspaper. And you could have been like, okay, this ain't gonna fly. Like, ooh.
And again, like I don't mean to harp on the tone thing, but like that's the kind of closing sentiment that like that's the kind of closing sentiment I would expect from like a cartoon movie of this show.
Oh,
Not like
absolutely.
the gritty, realistic one.
Can you imagine if Batman v Superman just ended with like fucking Bruce Wayne just going, "What does it mean to have both your parents to have both your parents' names be the same? It's like your kindred spirits."
I should watch that movie just to see.
Mike, have you seen
I know
that bullshit?
everything, but I know everything that happens in it, but
Okay.
like I don't want to watch it. It's gonna hurt.
You really shouldn't. You should, but you shouldn't. It's one
Yeah.
of those. God, what a lovely train wreck that movie is. I wanted to. This is the first movie I've seen maybe in like the last decade where I just actually wanted to leave. It was really weird. I was just like, I paid money. I don't care. Like, my car's right outside. It's a short walk away. I could do it, but
Yeah, I don't think I've ever walked out of a movie theater actually.
I haven't, just because like I feel bad or I feel like I've wasted money if I do so.
I did.
Yeah.
I walked out of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hands down, the worst movie I've ever seen.
I've never seen it, so I don't know.
I haven't either. I'm a fake nerd boy. So,
I'm gonna tell Twitter.
oh no, not them.
Hit me up on MySpace, guys.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
stuff.
that's we're all moving to.
That feeling that's before my time.
Oh.
It feels so weird to say. It kind of was, but wasn't. Like I was at like the peak of like some kids I knew had it, but not many.
It's all like
times.
it's like a music thing now.
Yeah, this is weird. It's kind of weird that it repurposed towards that, but whatever. Apparently, like people still use it somehow.
Yeah, I think like a lot of indie bands use it,
Oh yeah, totally.
but like I don't think it took off the way Justin Timberlake wanted it to. We're talking about MySpace. All right, Daredevil.
Yeah.
It's a good show.
I think Daredevil season 2 is the Google Plus of. Okay, we're gonna stop.
That's harsh.
Yeah.
That's harsh.
No.
How did you guys think the Punisher was handled? Did you guys think he was handled well? Like, do you guys know anything about the Punisher outside of?
Okay, so I'm gonna
No.
be straight up. The only thing I know about comics is I like The Watchmen a lot. The Watchmen. That's the name of the Alan Moore classic. The Watchmen. I have it right here on my desk. No, I like Watchmen. Read Dark Knight Returns. Thought that was pretty neat. I read like half of Hellblazer for some fucking reason, which is really weird for someone who doesn't know shit about comics to get into. I know, but I was like, hey, I like occult shit. So like those are like my 3 comic book things that I've read. So I don't know shit about the Punisher other than like I've seen one movie and all I remember from the movie is someone gets hit with like a rocket propelled grenade and they don't even explode, they just disappear. Like they just, there's a hard cut and that person is gone from existence, and I thought that was the funniest fucking shit. But I always just kind of like knew about the Punisher in terms of like, oh, here's kind of his deal, like his backstory and kind of his motivation, and I always just thought he was kind of like an angsty, like edgy Mick Edgson like hero thing. And then like actually watching this, I was really impressed. I'm like, oh wow, that's okay. That's I was completely wrong about this. This is really deep and tragic motivation, and like I see where he's coming from, even though I don't agree with him at all. Like it was very interesting. So
Yeah, you guys brought up the cemetery scene before, and to me that was like also the highlight of like the Punisher moments in Daredevil season 2, because a lot of people that don't know about the Punisher, they're just like, oh, he's the guy that kills people. Like, yeah, that's his thing, but that's not who he is. He doesn't do it because he might like to if he, depending on the writer, but yeah, he's a really deep character, and I feel like they really tried to bring that out in the courtroom scene, but then it kind of turned into something else, and I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the whole courtroom stuff and everything, but
I felt
Yeah,
really weird that he accepted that deal, actually. Like,
yeah.
I don't know much about him as, like, a character, really, so, like, I can't really back this up with anything, but I was like, I feel like given what I know about this guy, he would have been like, oh, you want to, like, do some stupid deal, like, fuck you, just, like, I don't know, but that was weird to me, that he
Mm.
accepted that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, uh, I mean, I accepted it as sort of like he's accepting the deal for now because he's so obsessed with finding who is responsible, and that he would probably. Yeah, I mean, I see where the complaint comes from, and that it doesn't feel like he should accept that deal because it goes against his whole thing.
Mm.
But I was okay with it because I felt like, in Daredevil season 3, they're probably gonna go at each other. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was weird, but I'm willing to accept it just because I guess it kind of works.
We got to see Fisk again, so that was nice.
yeah, I like Fisk. Although going back to the Punisher real quick, I also don't have a lot of history with the character. I do read comics, and I know probably half the internet is gonna hate me after this. I mostly was into DC stuff growing up, so my experience with Marvel has kind of been limited to like the adaptations, and I've read a few comics here and there. I've read some Spider-Man. I've read I tried getting into a few of the like big event stuff, but it was never really I never really connected to it as a kid. So as I got older, I just stuck with DC. So my experience with the Punishers is literally starting here. And the scene that actually, like, as amazing as the graveyard scene was, it was actually the scene at the pawn shop where I was like, I'm so in with this character, because it was kind of a cliche moment, but it was really good. Where he's walking away and then he offers him like child porn, and then you just see him drop the bag and stop. I was like, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, that was excellent. I liked that scene a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Punisher based on what I've seen here. I mean, I'm sure like Mike said, it always depends on the writer and who's behind the character.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at least as far as the Netflix adaptation of him goes, I like him. I think he's a good fit for this universe.
I don't have much else to say. Oh, actually, okay, so at the ending, I don't really know if they're implying that, like, Matt's gonna try and get back with Karen again, but, like, it felt really fucking weird to be like, yeah, let's go run away and fight ninjas forever together and be batshit insane, and we're gonna run away. Oh no, you're dead. Okay, I'll go to option B. Hey Karen, what's up? I'm Daredevil. Like, that was weird. I kind of hope that if season 3 is gonna fucking happen. What am I talking about? I kind of hope when that starts off, like, they're not like together and it's kind of like awkward and like, at least for a while. From what I've heard, I don't know shit about comics, but like, the 3 people I've talked to about this are kind of like, oh, she'll probably die in season 3 because so and so story event stuff that I'm not familiar with, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean she's gonna actually die in the show, but man, the minute they were talking about, oh, let's run away together and fight ninjas, I was like, well, there's the death flag.
Dead. Yep.
Never make that plan.
Yeah.
Never say, if we get out of here, let's run away together, because you're not getting out of here.
Yep.
No, it would have been really great if Punisher showed up like 5 minutes, like if he had just gotten a different Uber driver. Like, she could have been alive. You never know.
Yeah.
That's the other complaint I kind of had about it was they split the season up into 2 stories, and because they did that, I didn't really feel like either got the proper focus it deserved, and then I felt like both of them kind of weren't resolved at the end.
A little bit, like,
and
I felt
the
like
Fisk thing, that's 3 stories that kind of I feel like nothing was really resolved at the end of this season.
I felt like the Punisher stuff was resolved enough for my liking, while still leaving open like a lot of stuff. The like the whole hand thing or whatever, which like I guess is gonna be the myth arc of this show, is just is left in.
Well,
like,
it's probably building up to the Defenders though.
Well, yeah. But like, when like the final shot happens, like, oh, she's still alive. I'm like, oh, I don't really care actually that much. But
I don't even know what Black Sky is.
yeah, that's the other thing too. So in season 1, that was cool when it like the whole Black Sky thing was really mysterious and like they weren't explaining stuff. And I guess that's also too. Actually, I was talking with someone on Twitter about this. Season 2 gets really weird because a lot of the mystical shenanigans were just kind of hinted at and left ambiguous as to whether or not they actually really existed, and if they did exist, how bad it actually was. And then like season 2, they're just upfront like, yeah, this dude's immortal.
Yeah.
And like it gets kind of weird because they still in some ways try to leave some things ambiguous. Like they kind of explained the Black Sky thing as like, oh, just like a drive to murder people, but like I mean, like, there's the one line in season 1 that's like, oh, well, the Black Sky is dead. Those are really hard to get. And it's like, okay, so why does this happen in random children? Like, where do they come from? Like, what exactly does it do other than just giving them a murder boner? Like, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I have no
Please
idea.
tune into the Defenders.
Yay.
And what was the deal with the giant pit? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Actually, yeah. They never do anything with that. It's like, yep, there's a pit. Actually, that's one thing I will give this show credit for. Is, like, this is the first time in a while where suddenly ninjas is a perfectly valid plot device that totally works. And, like, leads to interesting drama. It's really weird how that worked out.
I guess. Yeah, you're not wrong.
It's like, yeah, there's ninjas now.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Black Sky.
Black Sky.
Black Sky. This is who I am.
Yeah.
Man, like, every character in this season annoyed me at some point. That's kind of disappointing.
I don't know. I liked Foggy throughout the entire series because Foggy was kind of like he was like the audience. He was like, Matt, you're not here, and the audience was like, yeah, Matt, you're not here. You're not doing it. You're going back and forth between the Punisher and Elektra. Like, can we just pick one here?
It was really weird when Foggy just stopped the show and was like, man, the second half of this year has been going really weird and kind of shitty for all of us. I feel so unresolved,
yeah.
He said, looking at Matt.
Maybe you and some other heroes can team up and we'll figure this all out next season.
Well, they do reference Jessica Jones at one point. They're like, oh, yeah.
They do. So I will say, though, I think Jessica Jones remains my favorite out of these two Daredevil seasons plus Jessica Jones. I like Jessica Jones a bit out of all of them more.
Really?
That's a sentence that I worded very well. Hi.
I mean, Kilgrave is pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's mostly a personal thing because Daredevil season 1 was probably the most well put together. Like, if I were to look at it completely, like, just purely objectively, Daredevil season 1 is just really well and tightly written. But Jessica Jones, just for my personal taste, I found it more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Yeah. You guys should finish it.
Yeah, I should. That's the next thing on my list.
So then next episode, we continue talking about Marvel Netflix Cinematic Universes.
Yeah. Dark Souls 4
and Dark
will be out
Souls
at
3.
that point. Well, actually, if I
DLC.
if I play Salt and Sanctuary before, we could probably keep this. We can keep the money flowing in.
Oh yeah, I'll have to get that too because people have been telling me I should play it.
I actually want. Well, I have to play Dark Souls 2 and Scholar of the First Sin first, but
just play Scholar of the First Sin.
Yeah.
I want to play both.
All right.
I like Souls enough that I feel like I can play both and like be. I don't know. Actually, it's kind of weird. I might actually just play Scholar because like Dark Souls 2, like I don't know what it is. Like the intro areas of that game, just I don't feel like playing. Like I just am like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because like Bloodborne and like Dark Souls 3 exists, but I mean, even I played Dark Souls 2. What I played of it before 3 was out, but maybe because it was leading up to it. There's just like I had no drive to go back to it after I'd finish a session. But yeah, I'll go back to it. I'm sure if I trudge through it, something will click eventually. Like that is a good game. It's just the worst of the Souls bunch, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Although like I said earlier, I kind of like. Well, I've only played Skull of the First Sin. I've said this before. I liked it a little bit more than Demon Souls actually. I wouldn't say it's better, but I got more enjoyment out of it than I think most people did.
All right, you like Jessica Jones more than Daredevil season 1. You like Demon Souls, or you like Dark Souls 2 more than Demon Souls. I think your membership on the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Dark Souls podcast is coming into questioning here.
Man, are you even like actually surprised that I like things in a controversial manner at this point?
No,
Yeah, no,
To
I
be
mean,
fair.
I could try to defend myself,
I can't
but
believe
I
Hatred was your game of the year last year. That was fucked up, man.
oh, okay. But
That's
yeah,
why
no,
it was
I just
actually Honey
I think
Pop.
yeah, no, Sakura spirit. Um, I feel like Dark Souls 2 offered something that the other games didn't, and
Absolutely.
I understand why most people would go, "Oh man, this is really super disappointing." Um, I went into Dark Souls 2 after Bloodborne. So I had already kind of like for me it's like no okay this is the continuation of the actual stuff from Dark Souls 1 and I view Dark Souls 2 as kind of like a cool alternate take of taking the series in a different direction and I liked its setup a bit. Plus the DLC is really good. So
It kind of, and I'm not very far in, but it kind of does feel in a little, like looking back on it now, kind of feels odd how Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, like it doesn't really feel like Dark Souls 3 is so much a sequel to 2 as in like a Sonic CD and Sonic 2 situation almost. Like I don't know if you guys got that too, but like it kind of feels like they're two different branches, even though that's not really the case, like story-wise or anything.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes,
well
interesting
you
how that
say that
worked.
but there are I mean Dark Souls 3 definitely leans heavier towards Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne in terms of gameplay but there's a
They
few
take
elements from Dark Souls 2 that they carry over.
they take a lot of like well like lore stuff, but also like mechanical things. Like if I recall, 3 is the only other game aside from 2 that lets you respec, which is nice. Um,
Yeah, the respecking, also the way you upgrade your Estus is taken from Dark Souls 2, stuff like that.
yeah.
2 introduced the new rolling system. If you go back and play 1, you could only roll in 8 directions, and that was kind of weird.
Oh
I
yeah.
like how seamlessly we transitioned back into Dark Souls talk from the MCU. Like this started off as a joke, but man,
We
just the
we
two
don't
things we talk about. Fuck,
we
we
don't
need to.
even need a
I
segue.
know, like we need to expand our horizons. Like these are just the two franchises that we have experience with recently. It's kind of sad.
Well,
This
I
is
mean,
One of us needs
they,
to get addicted to Stardew Valley or something. Like,
oh,
Hmm.
all right. I'll go force myself to play through all of the Harvest Moon games.
okay. I have Stardew Valley sitting on my Steam thing. I don't want to become addicted while like finals are coming up in a couple of weeks, so I'll save that for summer. Um, but yeah, I guess fuck it, whatever. Talking about Dark Souls 3 now. Um, so yeah, I guess we did end up having a bullshit segue in there anyways. I shouldn't have said anything. Should have just left it. It was perfect how it was. Um,
Speaking of things that are dark and gritty,
oh,
Hmm.
Dark,
Like what?
Dark Souls 3.
okay.
Oh, okay.
So I want to start out just by saying so like I streamed a little bit of my Dark Souls 3 experience and like I was actually going through the area blind, didn't really know what I was doing. The stream like video quality looked like shit and no one told me in the stream, so I never fixed it. But yeah, like the bitrate was really low, but it's up on my channel if you guys want to watch it. Um and like I basically just went through an area and fought a boss and I stopped the stream after I got to the bonfire that spawns right after the boss, and I just kind of like sat down 10 minutes looking at like my wall as I ate. I was just thinking like, yeah, I think that's my favorite Souls boss now. It was really weird how that worked out. Like I had to think about it for a bit. But the okay, so actually I should say for Dark Souls 3 stuff, I'm like halfway through the game. Zach finished the game, and Mike, you're close to the end, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much end game. I got like maybe 2 bosses left.
Okay, so yeah, this is a little bit more recent. So we're going to talk general and like early game stuff for now, and then like we'll give a cutoff where we start doing spoiler discussion. I'll probably put some time codes in the description for people that just want to, cut to emails or the end of spoiler talk then after this. But yeah, I guess for general stuff, or at least like the big thing, actually came just because I realized what my favorite Souls fight is now. Um, yeah, so the Abyss Watchers. So
Oh, it was that one?
So my favorite boss fight ever is Artorias for like Souls
Oh,
wise. Um, and then my second favorite fight ever is Lady Maria from Bloodborne.
Oh,
you
So
you are literally me and Zach.
yeah.
yeah, just
Oh,
combined. But so like I just had this moment where I was just thinking about the fight I just did. And I'm just like they just took Artorias' moveset and gave her Maria's and gave him Maria's gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck,
yep.
that's my favorite fight. God damn it. So yeah, Abyss Watcher Phase 2. Holy shit. I love like literally took my favorite two elements of my favorite two bosses, made a love child of the two. I fucking loved it. So yeah. That's some good shit. But
It is. I still like Maria a little bit more, but I really, really enjoyed that boss fight.
Yeah, if Abyss Watchers was a little bit more end game, like a little bit more towards the later half of the game, I think it would have been a little bit better, but I think they had to tone it down a little bit since it was more towards the beginning, but yeah.
yeah, so I'm at a moment where like okay, so I know the boss names and some like lore details and shit cuz I hunt down spoilers because I don't give a fuck because I'm a tool who doesn't enjoy anything apparently. But no, like, so I was thinking actually too, like, if that was the first Lord of Cinders fight, like, fuck, I'm looking forward to the others.
Mm.
I'm near the second one, so
You we're doing general stuff, but the boss you're at right now, I won't say who it is because it's kind of a little bit later. But that was the first boss I got to that I liked that one a bit more than Abyss Watchers.
okay. So was it the one that I just recently beat, who has two
I
swords?
think yes, yes.
Okay.
Oh.
That was the first fight in the game that actually gave me enough trouble that like okay, so like I don't I tend not to summon or at least kind of try not to on first run through just cuz like I want to learn the patterns and kind of know what I'm doing so I can help out other people.
Mm-hmm.
Cuz like I feel like if I like summon people even though that they have extra health and shit, like I feel like I don't really learn the bosses and then if I want a white phantom, like I feel like I'm not very helpful and I'm just wasting everyone's time. Um and then again, I say that, but like with Bloodborne, I did a shit ton of NPC summons on my first run through, but whatever. Um, but yeah, like that fight with that dual wielding man, actually is really weird. It's kind of an OC as like the fire in one hand, the darkness in the other. But anyways, yeah, like that was the first fight where I felt like I needed to pop an ember and just get that bigger life bar. And actually, that fight took me about an hour. Part of that was because I was being stupid and using one weapon when I should have been using another. But ooh, that fight gave me some trouble. So
No, yeah,
Yeah.
I was definitely stuck on it for a while, and I also eventually, like towards the end, was just like, you know what, I've got all these embers, I might as well use them just to get more HP.
yeah.
Um, I love a fight that can make me be stuck on it without frustrating me, because I would get a little bit further each time and learn his patterns a little bit more each time, and that's really what I look for in a challenging Souls boss. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the first fight in Dark Souls 3 where I was like, I'm stuck, but in a really, really good way.
See, I was the opposite. You two had trouble with that boss, and I beat him on like my third attempt. But as Zach knows, we are complete opposites with this. I will have no problems with the bosses that he has trouble with, and he will one shot all the bosses that I have trouble with. It's this weird cycle.
That's how Souls goes. Like it depends a lot on your build, but also like play style. Like I know there are some fight like one that always bothered me is like I don't think I've ever had to do more than two attempts on the Capra Demon, and I know that's like a common boss that people are like I fucking hate every time I have to play through Dark Souls 1. People hate that fight, and like I've never had issue with that one. Like it's really weird how that works out.
I've
Hmm.
never had problems with that one
Hmm.
either. I
Yeah.
also, I don't know if I said this before, but I normally, my initial playthroughs of Souls games are always like, I don't use shields. I try to dodge everything with rolls, and I like two-hand a katana or a scythe or something. So that's kind of how I play my Souls games, which is a little bit different than
See,
most
Like a
people.
Bloodborne.
I
Yeah.
I like to do sword and shield for my first playthrough. Kind of not impressed with the shields in this game. A little more damage,
No,
a
no.
little more damage soaks through than I would like, and I'm just like fuck it, I'm gonna roll because I don't want that. So
The thing is, though, a lot of bosses in this game have elemental damage, and
yeah,
That's kind of where the problem with the shields come in.
Well, I mean, even regular enemies, and maybe I'm just crazy, but like, I feel like in Dark Souls 1, like, if you had your shield up, you were pretty safe. And like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of just regular enemies in 3, you'll still take a little bit of chip damage, even if you have your shield up. I don't know if maybe that's just a build thing that I'm doing wrong. I did start off with, thing is Mercenary, like the dude that starts with the dual Haseo blades. Um, I started off as him, so maybe it's partially because of that and just how I build up my stats. But yeah, like a lot of the shield stuff that I went like because I wanted to do like a sword and shield dex run, but I'm basically doing a it's kind of weird how it worked out. I'm basically doing like a flaming Uchigatana run where I'm mostly two-handing it and just using the grass crush shield to gain stamina. And then also I got to a point where I was against an enemy that kind of resisted fire, so I'm like, I should have a backup. So I'm like, you know what? Scythes are cool. I'll be the dude with the flaming katana and the scythe. So now I have the sharp scythe that like scales with dex real good. So been doing that.
Man, that's super similar to me. I had a standard, just the standard Uchi Katana, and then I had the ice scythe that drops from the area before the boss we were just talking about. Yeah.
What I guess general stuff. So
I have something I kind of wanted to say. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
oh yeah, no, you can go for it. I wasn't gonna.
General impressions of like the first half of the game, just like spoiler free. The level design was a little disappointing.
You
Yeah,
know,
I'll agree with that. I'll agree with that.
I feel, and I think I'm just kind of being dumb. So, you know what the level design of this game reminded me of, and I think this is probably just a me thing. Reminded me of like Banjo-Kazooie.
You're gonna have to elaborate on that one.
Yeah, I need more details on that one.
Well, I mean, Mumbo Jumbo was there. It was really weird. No, but like it reminded me of a Nintendo 64 collectathon style, like a Donkey Kong or like a Super Mario 64 or like a Banjo-Kazooie game, where like it's linear. Like the actual levels are like it's a very linear progression to them. But then once you get to them, they're less like levels and more like these tiny little sandbox areas where there's a bunch of different shit throughout, and then there's a boss at the end. Because I feel like these actual individual areas and levels are bigger than they ever have really been in the other Souls games. At least to me, they felt like it. But the actual progression from area to area is pretty linear, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that with the sheer number of bonfires that they added in this game. Like, there's a bonfire.
Yeah,
like
that's
There's a part I actually took a screenshot of it. I don't know why they made it so that bonfires drop after bosses now. I know they did that in Bloodborne with the lanterns, but there's a screenshot I took of me standing at a bonfire with the camera whipped around, and you could see another bonfire right before it. And I'm like, why is this a thing? There's two bonfires right next to each other.
you can see the one. You know what my favorite thing is, actually? Someone, like, tried saying, I saw lore-wise, it's like, oh, the reason there's so many bonfires throughout is because, so much time has passed that, like, Hollows have been able to create little safe zones more so than they could in the other games. Like, okay, fuck off. But
I don't think that's how that works.
no.
Right.
Yeah, no, so I've seen the bonfire thing, actually. I don't remember who. I think this was on a podcast I listened to. Someone described it as like what they did is they made the bonfire, like the actual individual trips between the bonfires shorter, but the trips between them are full of tougher challenges and enemies, or at least like more lethal ones. And I kind of don't know how I feel about it because on paper it's like, yeah, it's a shorter but more interesting trip, but like in execution it feels like I'm fighting like two mobs of enemies and then checkpoint, and like I kind of feel weird saying this, but like even though I think it's technically a better designed thing, I kind of liked having the longer treks in the old games.
Yeah, well,
Even if they got annoying.
I think mine and Zach's complaint about the whole too many bonfire things, though, is that we kind of missed the shortcuts and how all the worlds always looped back into themselves.
The shortcuts are pretty lame.
Central Yarnum in Bloodborne.
Oh my god.
Fantastic level. Fantastic.
I don't know how the fuck they planned that out because that shit's too genius.
Yeah.
Central Yarnum is great for that. But, like, yeah, like, the shortcut stuff in this game was, like, just a bunch of lifts that, like, aren't even... Like, I mean, there's... In Dark 1 and Bloodborne in particular, there's a lot of times where you'll open up a shortcut or, like, a lift or whatever, and, like, you kind of, like, oh, so this is how this is all connected. Like,
yeah, it's the aha moment.
yeah, but then, like, in this one, it's like, oh, there's an elevator... Oh, okay.
Yep.
It just went from the base of the cathedral to the top of the... Oh, okay. Like, I don't care as much, but it's weird. And I think maybe, too, it could just be because it's not as long of areas, where it's like, when you get an individual shortcut, it doesn't really feel like it's that big of a deal anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah,
just like,
a lot
oh,
of the shortcuts that you open, you're just like, oh, I could have just walked over here. I don't need the shortcut.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing in that regard. So I kind of touched on... I don't know, Zach, do you have any more to...
No, yeah, I mean, there's a few areas in the game where the level design is really good, but for the most part, it's definitely a step down from Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne. I would say people might disagree, but it's kind of on par with Dark Souls 2.
Ooh.
Oh, no, I wouldn't go that far.
I don't know. I mean, like, the levels themselves, I definitely see, like, yeah, there's more interesting things in the levels. Like, there is more challenge. But as far as just, like, strict level design goes, you're just kind of going from point A to point B most of the time.
In that regard, yeah.
And even when there is, like, branching paths in terms of, like, oh, I can do this area or this area, normally they don't go for very long. Whereas, I don't know, I felt like Bloodborne had the best of that, where there's, like, points in that game where you're like, man, I could go to, like, 5 areas right now, and I don't know which one I should do.
Yeah, like, I was... Like, you guys ever see those progression map charts where they're literally just, like, boxes with an area name and then, like, little connecting lines to, like, where you can go from each area to another? So IGN has one up that I've just been using as kind of like a progress checkmark thing that I like to have up while I play through the game. Just like, oh, I got through another area, I can check that one off. For Dark Souls 3, it's pretty much just a straight line with a few alleyways. And then for, like, Bloodborne, it's like this U-shaped thing where it's just like there's all these different areas and, like, a couple areas that kind of connect the two different gaps and, like, yeah. And then, well, like, Dark Souls 1 is just pretty much a tower with a bunch of interconnecting, like, elevators and stuff that take you from different areas. But no, like, one thing I did want to touch on, though, I kind of talked about how, even though I feel like on paper it's better in execution, I felt a little disappointed by. I have that not only with the level design stuff, but, and actually, I want to back up with this. So, I don't know if you guys listen to a podcast called Bonfire Side Chat. It's a Souls-themed podcast that I recently started listening to just because of Dark Souls 3 hype and stuff. Actually, a really good podcast. I recommend you check them out if you haven't listened to them. But one thing that they talked about in an episode I listened to was this idea that in all the Souls games, with how no matter what build you do or how you distribute stats and whatnot, there's always a point where you get enough magical shit or, like, enough of the type of shit you need, and the gear gets upgraded high enough that, like, you start to cruise control a little bit. Like, some areas become easy, and, like, you feel that sense of character progression, like, you're getting really powerful, and you kind of feel like you're breaking the game, even if you aren't. Like, there's this feeling of just power that you get, no matter how short it lasts, and it kind of keeps pushing you through. And, like, usually there's a couple moments like that where an area feels like it should be a little more... or it feels like it should be harder than it actually is, but because of how your character build went, like, you're just cutting through stuff, and it feels really good when that happens. I haven't felt that halfway through Dark Souls 3 yet, and that feels kind of weird to me. And I feel like maybe the game is just so balanced with how stuff has gone that, like, I kind of never have felt like I've never really come up against something where I feel like, oh shit, like, I'm super... Like, this guy is just strong against everything I'm throwing at it, I need to rethink. But I've also never felt like, oh, I'm kicking this dude's ass because, like, I outsmarted the game, and the gear I chose is just breaking it at this point. And it's just like this
Hmm.
very neutral, steep, like not really steep, but just like this gentle slope upward in difficulty, where I just feel like no matter what I do, the game is just kind of matching it. But at the same time, while that makes it balanced and everything goes smooth, I'm not as interested, or I don't feel as rewarded in a sense with how I
Hmm.
progress as a character.
Hmm. I kind of see that as a good thing though. Like if you look back at Dark Souls 1, when the game opens, you can go to Duke's Archives, Izalith, down to the catacombs. By the time you're up to that third or fourth area, like your character is so overpowered for that area, you can just raffle stomp through it and it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But with three, like I don't know, I kind of like that new scaling that they have. Like you never really, as you said, you never really feel overpowered, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, I definitely, it's definitely there. Like even up until the end, I never felt super powerful. Stuff at the end of the game is still fairly challenging, and I did enjoy that. So yeah, I think the balance was okay.
Yeah. Well, like that's my thing is I feel like the balance is like too like I'm one of those people that like when I play
Too
something like I
good.
just want to fucking like break it apart and like do stupid shit and like succeed. And like yeah, this game is like so well designed I can't really like do that. I can't break it, which kind
I
of
mean, New
upsets
Game
it.
Plus, you might be able to.
Yeah, like it's probably just because like I'm coming from the SMT side of things too, to be honest, where it's like you can make shit where like just like loadouts and strategies that are just will carry you
Yeah,
through.
but even then, on like your first playthrough through an SMT game, you're normally not going to do that though.
It's
Like when you first played Nocturne, if you went into a boss without knowing what it was gonna do, you're gonna have that same feeling of like, oh man, you know.
yeah, like it's that, but also too like I feel like there's kind of like kind of a push and pull thing where sometimes you could walk into a boss fight and it's like, oh shit, I did that in 2 rounds and I shouldn't have been able to just because like I happened to come across the strategy that was good for that, or like I mean even with Dark Souls 1, I remember like when I first played that game, I went into that area like New Londo ruins, and I somehow managed to bullshit my way into getting a jagged ghost blade, which you were not supposed to get early on in the game. And I managed to cheese a lot of the early bosses through with that, and that felt really rewarding. And I think stuff like that just doesn't really happen in Dark 3, which like again, like game design wise, that's good, but like just as like that very specific like urge I have to like cheese games or like do shit I'm not supposed to is not being fulfilled as it is for
I
like say Bloodborne or like other games.
I would say there actually is a way you can do it, but I don't know if I should get into it because it's a little spoilery.
Okay. I do know that some faith stuff, at least from what I've seen, can get a little cheese, but
Not even that. There's just there's a way to do kind of what you're talking about in like an equivalent of going into New Londo and getting something you shouldn't have, stuff like that.
oh okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, that's just like kind of like the like RPG type of player I am coming out where it's like yeah,
Yeah.
I like looking at holes in systems and like breaking them. It's just how I do. Um
Yeah. I feel like Dark Souls 3 probably has them. They're just like it's not something that you'll probably find on your first playthrough.
I
Whereas
think
in the
they're
other
Yeah.
games you could.
they're very well concealed if they do exist. Cuz yeah, I'm sure that there has to be some stuff that you can like there one of those bosses has to have some dumb AI exploit that no one's found yet. You know? Like there has to be something that will just break that experience. But yeah, they did a good job of just making it a smooth like I don't know, it feels weird too because like we are talking about with Demon Souls, like I feel like with that one even more so than the other Souls games I played, like your build I feel like really affects how boss fights play out. Like some will just be completely trivialized, or some will be a lot harder depending on how your character stats go. And at least for
Hmm.
Dark Souls
Hmm.
3 so far, and I haven't really played around with the secondary character or anything, but with how that goes, I'm kind of wondering like, well, how differentiated am I gonna feel if a lot of the boss fights, like difficulty wise, feel the same. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out whenever I roll a second character. I'm sure they'll feel different to play and stuff, but like the actual like, I mean, it's always kind of fun to see in Dark Souls 1, like, oh, this area is a lot easier as a sorcerer, or, well, I guess that's a lot of areas, but, like, I feel like in
Yeah.
Dark 3, you're not going to get that as much. Like, it's going to be a much more uniform experience, which, I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm going through the game with the second character now, but I haven't gotten too far. I've kind of been staying in the early areas because I've been doing a lot of summoning and invasion stuff with the second character.
Oh, you
so,
gotta find all the Jinjos.
All the gingers.
Oh, right.
Never played Banjo, have you?
No, I did. I just was really
Oh,
confused. For a
show me your
moment.
Banjo card, Zach.
Oh no!
I just want to say, just
I played
as a
on a-
random comment, Banjo-Kazooie is one of the few games that I actually consider perfect. Like, honestly perfect. I love Banjo-Kazooie so much.
Would you call
It's
it the Dark
okay.
Souls of video games?
It's it's
Dark
the
Souls platformers.
Yes.
I like Banjo-Kazooie a lot. I don't know
Yeah.
why I said that like I was ashamed, but
So good. I'm so sorry. No, I think Banjo-Kazooie is okay.
Yeah.
I played it through once on an emulator. It was pretty good.
maybe that's the third thing we can dive out into.
Oh,
Oh
Banjo.
yeah.
Nuts and bolts, am I right, guys?
Oh, I'm just gonna leave now.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Well then. Oh man.
Back to Dark Souls 3 time.
Back to Dark Souls 3. I definitely feel like you've got a point in the fact that it does feel a little. I feel like it's definitely the most polished, and I guess depending on where you're coming from, that could be a good or a bad thing. It definitely feels like the culmination of everything they've been doing up until now.
Yeah, and like that's kind of like the point they've been trying to drive home ever since like they kind of gave that mission statement about like, okay, so this is going to be like the last Dark Souls game, probably not the last Souls game, that's fair to say, but like this is going to be the last of the Dark Souls trilogy, and we're kind of bringing in some stuff from Bloodborne. It's going to be like a little best of like greatest hits sort of deal, like game design wise and all that. And I think they did that really well. And like you said, this is like very obviously the most polished and play tested and just streamlined I think that any of the Souls games have ever been. And I feel really weird because I want to say gameplay wise, I think this is easily like the best one, just in terms of how it plays and like how everything works, and like there's nothing that feels really janky or low budget like in the other games. Even sometimes Bloodborne, there's some stuff that felt a little weird, I noticed, but it was
Yeah, the parrying sometimes didn't work at all for me.
yeah, it's Bloodborne, like they had the Sony money to help it out, but there's still some stuff that was like, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
But this one, like, I've never had any problem at all with anything that was like seemed glitchy or off. Like everything just felt really smooth and responsive. But like at the same time, and maybe we can transition into this point, I feel a little less impressed with Dark Souls 3 than I think I would have, just because it doesn't feel very original. And like I'm like, this is the best one, like playing it wise, I think, but like a lot of the tricks, a lot of like the stuff, just I feel like since I've seen it before, there's a little bit of like it doesn't feel as good to me or something. I don't know, and like I kind of, from what I've played so far, kind of thought maybe wouldn't mind if Souls took a few years off. Maybe that'd be good for the franchise, but
I feel like it's a fine line that it walks, because there is a lot of stuff in the game that feels like, even like we were just praising Abyss Watchers, and what we praise it as was it's like these two previous boss fights that we really like.
yeah,
Yeah.
It does walk that line, but I think it doesn't go too far over it, and I might be a little bit different with you on this, is that I kind of feel like with this series, it's so good that I don't really mind it being a little redundant, because I like what it's being redundant with. I feel like I just wouldn't mind playing this once a year if they wanted to keep going with it like that. But I could definitely see where that would become a problem for someone who's getting a little sick of it.
like yeah, like it's kind of the thing where like I would still probably play and enjoy them if they did it annually, but just there's a lot of like even like ambushes and stuff where it's like, oh, there's like this little alcove and there's a corpse at the end with that's an ambush, like stuff like that just like kind of has stopped working, I feel. and like it's really weird just because I feel like maybe like even if it was just like 2 years, like I would love to see what like a break could do if like they can make like Metal Wolf Chaos 2 in the meantime. Um, but yeah, like they're just like gameplay wise, but also yeah, kind of story wise too. It feels like I don't know, like I know a lot of people were hyped about it, but like it's like, oh yeah, Andre's here. It's like okay, or also too how like the Firekeeper just says a bunch of quotes from the other level up maidens in the previous games is a little on the nose. Like I don't there's nothing that really made me like cringe or be like okay fuck off, but like at the same time it feels like it's borrowing and relying on Dark 1 maybe a little bit too much.
I feel like maybe a lot of that
Right.
though might be because it's supposed to be the end of the series.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of that is like, we're gonna look back at everything that's come before, and the plot itself kind of sets that up to where like the plot of Dark Souls, this Dark Souls game is kind of like, hey, here's all these people that have come before, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
like that's kind of why too I think it gets away with a lot of things that like if this wasn't the last one, I'd be like, okay, really? But like yeah, there's a lot of like stuff. There's like a lot of payoffs. Like there's some stuff I've been spoiled on. There's a few plot threads that I never really thought we'd get an answer to that we do, which is nice.
Yeah.
Um, but like, yeah, it's really weird. Just I don't know. Like I'm kind of curious to see what they do with Souls after this. Like I could see Bloodborne 2 being a thing. Uh, I'd like to. They've messed around with the idea. They've said in interviews and stuff about like maybe we do a sci-fi thing next, and I'd like to see. Like I could
I
see
would
them doing
love to
like a
see
Dead
that.
Spacey thing.
Oh yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Like
That
I'd like to
yeah.
see that.
I would like to see. I would like to see. So I'm excited for the Dark Souls 3 DLC, and I want the Dark Souls 3 DLC to bring very specific things to this game. I guess we can get into that a little bit more later because it's a little going into the later half of the game. But moving on away from Dark Souls 3, I definitely want each game to be more unique in the way that Bloodborne was. So I
Yeah.
want it to tackle different genres, and like Bloodborne brought in like you parry with guns, and that added a new dynamic to it. And if they could bring like a new dynamic to each new game, I feel like that would help make it keep it feeling fresh.
And it's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting because that was you're kind of touching on something that like I don't want to call Dark Souls 3 Jack of all trades, master of none. It's just like Jack of all trades, second to master. Like it does everything really strong, but I feel like it always is at that 9.9 out of 10 point. It's really weird. Um, or like they'll do something and I'll be like, oh, I really like when Dark One did that, and then it's like, I mean, this is like just as good, but like since I've seen it before, I feel kind of weird and like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's some weird shit. Like I still like the game a lot, but like I'm struggling right now because so far my ranking is Dark 1, Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3, and then Demon Souls, and probably Dark Souls 2 last. But I need to give that game a proper chance before I rank it. I feel, but I'm not sure if I like Bloodborne or Dark 3 more yet, and I feel like Bloodborne I'm kind of leaning more towards it just because. I don't know, like a lot of the originality stuff in Dark 3, and like I am not gonna lie, like part of the uniformness of the difficulty in the builds and stuff is kind of I think pushing Bloodborne more towards being my second favorite rather than Dark 3, but yeah, I don't
You
know.
say that, but I feel like at least the way Bloodborne played out was kind of even more uniform because all of the builds, at least to me, kind of felt the same in Bloodborne.
Oh
I didn't feel
yeah.
like it had that depth. I feel like Dark Souls 3 kind of does a good job of being like Bloodborne with more depth to the character
Yeah, and
And
I
stuff.
see, that's where Dark Souls 2 really shines. A lot of people call that one the playground of the Souls series. There is so much freedom with your character and weapon builds and everything. It's insane.
I guess I should. Yeah, I just want to clarify too, because I totally agree. I think Dark 3 has a lot more options. That actually too, that was part of my main reasons why Bloodborne wasn't as good as Dark 1 in my eyes because there was a lack of build options. But like, I kind of feel like even with Bloodborne's limited like stuff. I felt like with the multiple characters I did with that, like I felt more differentiated than I think I'm gonna feel with Dark 3. But then again, I need to go back through Dark 3 with the second character before I can really make that call. But yeah, it's weird. Also, too, I feel like I I think there's just like an element of like I kind of like Bloodborne's gimmick, no, not really gimmick, but like that play style and the execution of that more than I like. Like I feel like Dark 3 kind of is so uniform and such a collection of the ideas that came before in terms of like the gameplay stuff that I don't want to say like it plays it too safe or anything, but like there wasn't anything that like outwardly impressed me other than the fact that it was so polished. Like that was the one standout for me. But like there was never really a point with it where I was like, this really impressed me with the gameplay stuff. At least so far.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see it's basically like if you had a way you liked playing the previous games, you could do it in this kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bloodborne for me is my personal favorite because I feel like Bloodborne catered to my playstyle. But with Dark Souls 3, I see where you're coming from. It didn't bother me as much as it bothered you, but I can definitely see that it is all kind of what had come before. There isn't too much like brand new. There's no like twists on the formula really.
I feel
Yeah.
like what he was going for with 3 was the perfection of the Dark Souls formula. Not including, I mean, you can see where Bloodborne kind of came into play, but I feel like Miyazaki just really wanted to perfect the Dark Souls formula. And that's kind of where like the whole shield combat came back into play, because that's Dark Souls, it's not Bloodborne.
You know, and it's funny you mentioned that too, because I feel like he totally succeeded, at least from what I've played so far, other than, you know, level design gripes and stuff. I feel like he totally, like, nailed it, and, like, in terms of refining the formula of just the core Dark Souls trilogy, I think he totally nailed it and succeeded. And I was kind of expecting that coming in, just like this is going to be the one where they kind of get it down and there's no awkward hang-ups, really. But then, like, actually getting it and playing through it, I don't know if I actually wanted that. It's really weird. Like, I almost feel like maybe I didn't need this in my life. I'm happy it's here, and I'm gonna enjoy it a lot, but, like, maybe I'm ready for them to move on to something different, which, I mean, like, that's not really a problem with the game at that point. That's just more of, like, what I'm interested in, I guess.
I could be wrong on this, but I remembered reading didn't Dark Souls 3 technically kind of begin development after Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne just kind of happened alongside it?
I vaguely remember hearing something like that.
It's
possible.
sure. I'm pretty sure Bloodborne and 3 were at the same time. I'm not sure if 2. Like I could see maybe early
Maybe.
planning stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dark Souls 2, I mean, everyone knows it was made by a different team,
Yeah.
but I feel like more than anything, Dark Souls 3 really does feel like a sequel to Dark Souls 1 that, as it developed along, took elements from Dark 2 and Bloodborne into itself.
Yeah.
See, that's what I wanted, though. Like, if they decided, which I think that's probably their plan because they've said it numerous times, but if the series actually did end here, I would be fine with that because this feels like the end to me, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah. And also too, like threes are hard. Like, you know what I mean? Like after a point, like sequel after sequel, like it's hard to make everyone happy with it and also provide closure, and like especially with games, because not only do you need to do that shit narratively, you need to do that mechanically too, and that's just not always possible. Like I mean, there's a lot of cases of like the third entry of a thing where they bring in a weird gimmick. Like I think about like the Jack and Dexter games, and like 3 brought in, like that weird like light super mode thing you had to like solve puzzles, and like threes are hard. Like
It was the balance to the darkness of 2.
oh, that was so bad. No,
I have a secret love for Jack and Dexter.
I like 1 and 2 a lot.
That's what this podcast is going to be about now. The Jack and Dexter
You know,
hour.
Don't forget Banjo-Kazooie. That needs to happen.
I'm gonna piss a lot of people. I'm gonna
the
piss a lot of
mascot
people off,
platformer.
but I think the best like racing game of all time is Jack X Combat Racing. It's a pretty damn good game. But anyways, that's the only Jack and Dexter game I actually own. Funny enough, but well, physically, but so like I kind of just feel in general too that and like I don't know, this is kind of weird coming from the guy. It's like, oh yeah, I don't give a shit about spoilers and all that, but it's like I think Dark Souls 3 on paper does everything better than 1 does, and like it's a lot more smooth than 1 definitely, but just like I feel like the fact that 1 exists kind of belittles 3 a little bit quality wise to me.
I don't know if I necessarily agree. I mean, there is also the element that like we've played a lot of these games, we've talked a lot about these games, but it's not necessarily. I mean, I think it's okay that they didn't try to do something crazy with this game because it's like the culmination of everything.
Yeah.
I would have liked, I guess, something. I guess I would have liked if there was a new gimmick to it, but I think it's okay that there isn't.
Yeah.
And I think it does rely on 1 a lot, but I feel like it does it in a way that works personally.
Yeah, I mean they did add in the whole sword art thing, which is I guess that's the closest thing to a new gimmick that 3 has, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I
Is
like
it bad
the
that I
weapon art
completely
stuff.
forgot that was a thing while we were talking about this whole thing?
I to be honest, I haven't used it much. Just the stuff I roll with, it's not very effective, but
The katana, from what I understand, if you're two-handing the katana, one of its sword art things works as like a parry, which
Yep.
is cool.
yeah.
And then there's like this scythe I was using. Its sword art is to enchant it with ice. So I feel like the sword art stuff is cool, but it didn't. It kind of feels like if they hadn't have had that mechanic, there would have been ways to do it anyway, like enchanting, buffing,
Yeah.
parrying. It's kind of like the let's push everything else into this button.
Yeah,
thing.
it was kind of like, here's, hey, magic people, or hey, people that don't use magic, here's just here's a freebie, which, is kind of cute.
Yeah.
Like,
Man, there are so many magic like weapons though, like magic great swords, magic
oh,
swords.
yeah. And also, too, like, I've been kind of, like, railing on I just want everyone to know, like, I fucking love this game still, and, like,
Yeah, we're sounding weirdly negative. I do love this game a lot.
Yeah.
I'm playing it nonstop.
You know what it is?
I guess it's just natural to
Yeah.
what comes before.
Yeah, like it's just one of those things where it's like I love it a lot, but just here's why I think Dark One and Bloodborne, probably Bloodborne. I'm still not. I'm still a little on the fence. I'm leaning towards Bloodborne, but I think I like Dark One and Bloodborne a little bit better than this game, and I think in a world where like I hadn't played Dark One and Bloodborne first, I think my opinion on Dark Souls 3 would be a lot different. It's just like because I don't feel. I don't even want to say surprised because I think that's the wrong word, but just like because I feel like it's not very original or something. Like there's just something about it that like kind of takes it a little bit downwards for me. But like I think though as like a culmination of everything, it does the job perfectly, and like all of my expectations for it have been like completely met. I could do with maybe like I do want to say like I think a lot of like the new stuff they do introduce to on top of things I think is really cool. Like there's one character whose backstory I actually found pretty interesting just from what I've read of it both in game and doing some research out of curiosity on my own. The boss I'm about to fight, actually.
Yeah.
But I just wish maybe there was a little bit more stuff like that, or
Well-
also the bonus boss's backstory too. I think is really neat.
I
Let's-
don't
let's
take
not
much notes
forget
about that
the
bonus
DLC.
boss, though.
Yeah, the DLC that could be
Like,
neat if they do.
The
something like
DLC for every single Souls game has improved the main story significantly. We got Artorias with Dark Souls 1, we got Maria from Bloodborne, we got the Ice Place in 2. Like, Dark Souls DLC is where it's at.
that. You know
Dark
what?
Souls DLC is usually the best DLC. Yeah.
Yeah, like you actually say that. Like I'm thinking about it. Like yeah, if the DLC like is a lot more like new stuff, like even gameplay wise, like I'm fine if it like retreads ideas, but like I kind of just hope they're not like, hey, go to Blighttown for the first like if they're like new if they're new areas with new characters and stuff, maybe you can throw in one or two old ones in there that are pretty neat. Then that'd make me happy.
So I think when it comes specifically to like lore and story stuff, this really comes down to what you wanted from this game. I went into this game wanting like callbacks to the old games, and I wanted answers, and I wanted like, oh, this thing from that game, maybe it's like this now. So I feel like how you feel about the story of this game is going to really come down to what you want out of it. Personally, for me, it kind of gave me everything I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was weird because like I was kind of hoping that it would be like a half and half mix, and it's leaning way towards Dark 1 than the other, but also too like there's a lot of stuff in Dark 1 that was unexplained, and it's like I'm happy that we got answers for and stuff like that too. So
yeah. Even then though, there's still a lot of stuff that they leave mysterious, like both things from this game originally and things of like, man, what happened to that Dark Souls 1 thing? It's not telling us, but something definitely happened.
Yeah, and I think that's nice just to encourage speculation. I think it answers enough of the important stuff from what I've seen, but also leaves enough room for like discussion and discourse, which is fun.
I would say that's probably one of the series' strong points. I know a lot of people, obviously, like, people built their careers around talking about Dark Souls lore, but like one of the things that really drew me into the series once I got fully into it was that element of like it feels like there are answers, but they want to encourage discussion within a community.
Yeah.
Because if I felt at any point like they were just being mysterious for the sake of being mysterious, it would feel cheap. But I feel like no, there's like a full story here. They're just giving it to us in chunks.
Yeah.
And like I also think like for Dark Souls 3, I feel like I want to give them credit because like they had to have had made Dark Souls 1 and been like, okay, there's a lot of this shit that we're just going to leave as a mystery and who gives a shit about the resolution. And like to go finally back and be like, okay, Dark Souls 3 time, maybe we should answer some of this stuff. They don't really ever drop the ball, I feel. Once again, or at least from what I've seen. Like they do a pretty good job of wrapping all that up, and you know, you can't always say that for stuff that probably wasn't planned. So that's nice. Like there's nothing too awkward looking in there. So yeah, that's Dark Souls 3 talk. I guess
it's a really good game.
It is.
It is. It is.
It's one of those things where like I got everything I wanted out of that game. I still like it's really, you know what it actually kind of reminds me of is Force Awakens, where it's like I went in, all of my expectations on like the checkboxes were like completely checked off, and I walked out and I'm like, okay, like
that was a game.
Yeah, like I feel like maybe it could have been a little bit more, but I'm really happy, and I think it's a 10 out of 10 with what I got. Like it's one of those. It's really weird. So yeah, I look forward to the DLC. I think it's a good game that people should check out if they're a fan of the series, but I would definitely say play Dark Souls 1 first. Yeah. Like, a lot of stuff I don't even think will make sense unless you play. Like,
just play Dark Souls 1 just to fight Artorias, because, come on, he's the best.
Like, it's, like, man, because, like, even though I said stuff like, oh, I feel like if I hadn't played Dark 1, I would have enjoyed, like, the gameplay stuff of 3 more, but, like, definitely, like, from a story standpoint and just, like, there's a lot of, like, payoffs in 3 that you're not going to get anything out of if you haven't played through 1, so go ahead and play that. It's a good game. So is this one. All the Souls games are great. And Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Kazooie, the long-lost cousin of the Dark Souls series.
No, okay, so the order you gotta do Dark Souls 1, Demon Souls, Banjo-Kazooie, Bloodborne, Banjo-Tooie, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Jak and Daxter.
Yeah,
Jak and Daxter.
That's the complete chronology.
There we go.
Jak and Daxter's the future. After you beat 3, there's going to be a little special cutscene. And
yeah, well, don't spoil it, but Daxter does show up if you do the special ending.
Oh, yeah.
Video games. So yeah. I don't know if we Zach, did you? Well, I think you ranked him on Twitter, but like I kind of said like before, like yeah, my Souls ranking is probably like Probably Dark 1, then Bloodborne, then Dark Souls 3. Those two might change, still not sure, but probably Bloodborne, then Dark Souls 3, then Demons, then Dark 2. What would you guys say is
Yeah.
your overall Souls ranking now that we're at the end of this thing?
I would say I did say this on Twitter, but Bloodborne, Dark 1, Dark 3, Dark 2, Demons.
As of right now, Dark 1. It's very close. As of right now, Bloodborne might be slightly higher, if not equal to Dark Souls 3, Dark 2, Demons.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. Like Dark 3 and Bloodborne feel very equal to me, but like for different reasons. Like
Yeah.
I love them for different reasons, but my love of them is very neck and neck. It's weird because they're not particularly similar in terms of like Dark 1 and Dark 3 would be the most similar, you know, but like
Yeah.
I don't know, like the things I love about Dark 3 and the things I love about Bloodborne are just so close. It's weird. So
Yeah, from a story standpoint and lore, I like Dark 3 way more, but gameplay wise, I love the dashing to dodge mechanic in Bloodborne. I love how fast paced it was. Level design was fantastic, but I'm just a Dark Souls lore fanboy. I love the story.
you know, it's really weird actually. For I think Dark 3 is kind of proven to be like from the story community sort of thing. I've just from the little I've seen of it, I've seen a lot of like divisiveness about people's reaction to the story of this one.
Really?
Yeah, like I know some people were just like I completely hated it, and some people are like, oh, I love that. I've enjoyed what I've seen so far, but I'm curious to see how that goes. I mean, granted, when you do it, when you finish something, there's always going to be people that don't like the ending. Or like
Yeah.
closure or like explanations for stuff that they had like theories about and they're wrong and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm curious to see. I think it'll be overall positive, but I think there's gonna be like a small community of people that wanted something different. But
You can't avoid that though.
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, personally, for me, when it comes to story, like I would say the Dark Souls lore and the Dark Souls story, especially through 1, 2, and 3, and don't neglect 2. 2 had some good stuff. I'm gonna be like the Dark Souls 2 defender now. Dark Souls 2 had some really cool story stuff. Like Dark Souls 3, the whole cycle thing that started mostly in 2. But I don't know. As much as I love like dark fantasy and everything, I guess I never really knew how much I wanted Lovecraft Souls, but man, did it hit the spot for me.
This is something I talked about in like a group chat once, but I never went on record saying it. I feel like Dark 2 I feel kind of bad for story wise because like Dark Souls as a series, like one of its central themes are being about like cyclical natures of stuff. And Dark 1 you kind of start that off and like it's not really the start of the cycle per se, but like it's kind of the intro to it. And then Dark 3 is the ending of that sort of thing, or like at least closure of some form of like, okay, this is what happens with the cycle. And Dark 2, it's really hard to make a game in a trilogy about like a cyclical thing and have it be important and have it be halfway, you know? Like no matter how good of a writer you are, that's kind of a struggling point I feel. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem with Dark Souls 2 is that, like how I mentioned earlier, where like I feel like if you are just being mysterious, and I get the sense that there aren't answers, then I'll feel it's cheap. There are a few things in Dark Souls 2 where I'm like, they didn't go far enough. Like with
Yeah.
Dark Souls 1 and 3, it's like I know everything I need to know, and the stuff I'm speculating about is stuff I would want to speculate about.
yeah.
There are
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 critical things in Dark Souls 2 where I'm like, you're just not telling me the thing I need
Yeah.
to know to make the connection here.
Yeah.
The flow of time is convoluted and Lord Trends.
Basically, question
Yeah.
mark? I don't know. Is it Lord Ren? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, actually, that's one thing or whatever. It was kind of like a neat aha moment for me. Is kind of early on. There's like a point where like, well, actually, just it's the area right before the Abyss Watchers. Someone pointed out, oh, it's probably Darkroot Garden because like there's like you see a bunch of the mushroom people there, and some of the item drops are the same as the ones in the garden. And I was like, oh, that's neat. I never would have thought about that. Well, there's the fact that the demon ruins just literally show up and are called the demon ruins. That's weird.
Yeah, there's also that.
Oh yeah, there's literally the area.
Yeah.
That's just the area.
Yep.
You know, that was one where I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about the fact that this is, you know what, fuck it, it's fine.
I was all in from the moment it happened. It was what I wanted the most to happen, and it happened, so I was okay.
You know what also I think kind of like I'm happy with is that it is different. Like, changes have happened, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It would have
if
been...
there were no changes.
Yeah, like, if it would have been one thing if it's just like, here, let's copy-paste this Dark Souls 1 level. Like, that would have been like, okay, come the fuck on. But, like, stuff is... it's different. It's different, so that's
See,
good.
yeah, and going back to the whole cycle thing, I loved what Dark Souls 3 did with this. They turned it into who is going to be our hero? Somebody has to save us and link the fire. They took that and turned it into like this thing, like this powerful religion turned up for about linking the fire, where you have people who are celebrated for doing it now, and they're like seen as heroes. And I don't know, I just think that's really cool.
I think one of my favorite thing of the story beats is just the implication with the whole Lords of Cinder thing that like everyone's like starting power level. Yeah, fuck, it's DBZ at this point. Everyone's starting power level is equivalent to like Dark Souls 1 endgame stuff. Like, because of just the whole, like, oh, yeah, all these people were badass enough to do the whole Link the Fire journey thing.
Yeah.
And just that implication's like, oh, yeah, we're starting off right where Dark Souls 1, Link the Fire ended. Like, everyone's about that powerful. That's our starting point, and it goes up from there.
Exactly. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, that's a great escalation. I like that a lot. Also, too, I'm not gonna lie, I mean, Dark Souls areas always look shitty and run down. I feel like this is the most shitty and run down they've ever looked, and I love it for that. Like, I feel like, yeah, this is an apocalypse that has happened upon an apocalypse. Like, there was an apocalyptic event, and it just got worse and worse over time. Like...
there have been hundreds of apocalypses.
Yeah, and it feels like it. It's really hard to explain, but it's like, wow, it's like Dark Souls 1 world got hit by a tsunami. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's just like everything feels so ruined, and like the whole point of the game too is to feel like, oh, it's a bunch of embers and ashes, and like this is the last remaining bits and pieces of a world near the end, and they totally nail that feel. I love that.
Yeah, he was like, oh, you wanted to know what happened to this thing that you didn't have answers to? Well, here it is. You're not gonna like it, but here it is.
Oh, like. Did this game... So this is one thing, actually, that, like, I got with some areas. Did this game, like, aesthetically feel a little bit more Bloodborne-y than you guys were imagining it would? There's a few areas where I'm like, man, I felt like I'm walking through a Bloodborne area. I was kind of surprised.
Graphically, I feel like it's very clearly on the same engine, and there have been some reused assets in that respect. So,
yeah. The tombstones and everything straight out of Bloodborne. Some of the character moanings... also from Bloodborne. Yeah.
I never even thought about reused assets, but yeah, I could see that actually. But like,
yeah, there's... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I forget what area... Oh, did we all try to talk over each other just now?
That's the best.
What was the area? I think it was Bloodborne that had like the circular rock triangles on the floor you could knock over. Was that Bloodborne or Dark Souls 2?
I don't know.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, those were in the nightmare places in Bloodborne.
Yeah. Those show up at one point in Dark Souls 3, and I'm like, oh, it's these things. Okay.
Yeah. Some of the buildings, like the architecture and stuff, felt a bit more Victorian than I was expecting. I don't know, it was weird.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's that. I got nothing else to say more about Dark Souls 3. I like how we finished that conversation, then we continue talking about Dark Souls 3. It's a good game, kids. Go buy it.
Yeah.
Actually, kind of weird how it's the best-selling one, which I feel like there's kind of an implication with that a lot of people are starting with this one, and I don't know how that makes me feel. I mean, I'm like, it's fine, but like, I don't know if they'll appreciate it as much. Like
they won't. They definitely won't.
No.
So yeah,
it is as direct a sequel as something that takes place hundreds of years after could.
Yeah.
Oh, also, I think this is a good way to end this out. This is the best patches gag.
Best patches.
I loved it.
was
So
pretty good.
I'm just gonna step in here. I didn't see it. I don't know what it is. Patches glitched out for me.
Oh.
I ran into Patches at Firelink, and he was just like, "I'm sorry for what I did," and I went, this is the first I've met you, but okay."
No, okay, so I'm actually that kind of makes me sad that that can still happen because for Bloodborne I had a thing where I met Patches Spider, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I'm just like, "Oh, oh, it's Patches. Oh, like, well, okay." And then like 10 hours later, I'm walking through the place and I get kicked down, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that doesn't match up at all." And then I went back to speak with him, but because I already triggered the apology, he was just like, "Oh yeah, hey man, what's up?" So I got the apology, then the trap, and then hey man, what's up? In that order. And it was
I
really
just
fucking
got the
weird.
apology in Dark Souls 3. I didn't get anything.
It was weird. Also, dude, I don't know how I feel about the like. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with like the really convoluted bullshit questline stuff in the Souls games. I almost wonder if maybe 3 takes it a little too far. Like, I'm fine with it, but I can see how some people wouldn't be.
Oh, I
Uh,
screwed up everybody's quest line in this. Everybody's dead.
I'm pretty sure I'm screwing up everything as we speak.
Yeah.
I managed to do the big quest line that leads to a special ending. I somehow managed to get that one right.
Okay,
I
which
screwed
one?
up every other one.
There are 2 big dumb quest lines that lead to the endings.
Oh,
The easy one or the
not
hard one?
not just finding the item in the hidden area, the one that's actually a quest line throughout the whole game.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, everyone else is dead. Dark Souls. Everyone.
Happy endings.
hmm
Speaking of endings,
Our email account is an ending?
I
Segue?
don't know.
You didn't leave me with much.
Speaking of things that have gone on too long, this segue.
Oh, that's painful. Okay, so we have an email from Julian, and he says, Rasen and Zach, what is the most anime and original premise that you can come up with for a video game?
Ooh.
Oof.
The most anime and original. Is that 2 separate things or one thing?
One thing. So it has to be original, but it also has to be really anime, which is hard. It's rough.
Yeah.
Mike, you can join in on this. Let's brainstorm this.
All right, let's do it.
Because, like, my
All right.
immediate thing is, like, high school student, but then I feel like that's not original at that point, you know?
Yeah,
College
but
student. I don't know.
Whoa.
Breaking the mold too much.
Yeah, no, it's got to be a high school student, but then we have to
Yeah.
do something original with the high school student.
Mm.
Okay. Male panty shot.
Oh, there we
Whoa.
go. We're breaking new grounds here. Mm.
Hmm. Can anime be original at this point?
I don't know.
Ooh, shots fired, industry.
Oh.
So, it's the story of a boy who goes to high school and wears really short shorts, I guess. And he is
Pretty sure that's
also
been done.
I, fuck you. So at night, he's also blind, and at night, God damn it! Now I'm going like unoriginal, the opposite way. I'm going too Western. No, but yeah, but at night he becomes the halberd man, where he goes around with his magical halberd and fights pirates. Oh wait, no, that's One
So
Piece.
it's-
Fuck everything. And fights
All right, I got
Vikings.
that.
You know what? I don't think there's any goddamn Japanese bullshit that talks about Vikings ever, other than like maybe a job in Final Fantasy. So yeah, he
Oh
uses
man,
a
but there is
mystical.
that one joke with the Pokemon redub.
Oh. Oh god damn it! You're right. That's different. Those aren't real Vikings.
Oh.
So yeah, he has his magical halberd in one hand and like, just say like a tennis racket in the left. He just fights Vikings at night. That's my premise.
Okay. Where are the Vikings during the day?
They exist within a dark hour.
See, that's the biggest twist. There are no Vikings.
Oh,
We can call it Viking Baller Tommy, because that's a good Japanese high school student name, Tommy.
Tommy.
There's a bunch of those around. Um, uh, no one picked that up ever as a thing. If you want that idea and you can make it work as a salvageable thing, you have my permission. Go do it.
You have to
not
license it
copyrighted.
though. No, it is. We're
Oh, it
copyrighting
is. Oh, it's copyrighted. All right. Well,
You've got to pay. We Are Friendly podcast.
VBT will live on in our hearts forever. Okay. Thanks, Julian, for the email. We also have another email by Julian. This one is written in Comic Sans. And he says, Rasen, on the last podcast, you said you want more shorter JRPG-ish games like Undertale. You should definitely check out Lisa. It took me about 8 hours, and I thought the story was a lot better. Check it out. Okay. One day. I know that's another, like, kind of Earthbound-y inspired game, so I'll probably check it out one day. You guys played Lisa?
No.
nope.
Okay. Another email.
Sorry, Julian.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from Matt, who has been on the podcast before, 2 episodes ago. It says, my top secret source at Atlas has confirmed that Persona 5 is a social experiment and was never real. How do you feel about this information? I'd be down. It'd be worth, like, just to see how long you can keep people interested in, like, countdown events that lead to nothing. That'd be great. I can't believe they're doing
what if
another
instead
fucking countdown.
the game was a cross between SMT and Fire Emblem? And
That's the end of We Are
Okay.
Friendly podcast episode 6.
Oh my god, I would love if, like, it's just like, yeah, Persona 5 canceled. Tokyo Mirage Sessions 2. We're
Oh,
doing
it's
it.
gonna happen. No, if Persona 5 was actually a social experiment, I would be okay with that.
I would too. It'd be kind of funny. Like, I'm
I would
excited.
just-
I'm excited for Persona 5, but just the odd, like, I don't care how excited I am for something. Like, if it just comes out like, no, it's not real, it's a social experiment, I would just, like, be so, like, shocked that I don't even think I could be mad at that point. I'd just sit the fuck down and be like, yeah, I respect that.
I just want to see the fan base completely fall apart.
Oh, that would be oh my god, there would be fire in, like, mothers' basements everywhere. Yeah.
Oh no, I like that YouTuber.
Oh no. Who will dissect the openings now? I've never watched a Mother's Basement video. But anyways.
They're pretty good. Check them out.
I probably should. But yeah, I actually can't believe that they're like, hey, here's a countdown to another thing. Like, come on. Like,
After Final Fantasy 15, I'm numb to everything.
no.
Like, I'm not surprised by countdowns. I'm not surprised by delays. Just, yeah, when it gets here, it'll get here, and
Yeah.
it might take years.
I feel like, too, like, I'm kind of bummed because it's like, oh, the countdown event to more info, and it's near release time, kind of, sort of, summer 2016's coming up, and I feel like this is going to be the one where they're finally like, here's a solid date when it will be out. And, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm not that excited anymore. Just because, like, they've been so secretive and, like, so stingy with giving us, like, news and info for this one that, like, I kind of feel like it's been detrimental at this point. I just don't care that much anymore. Like, I'm super excited for when it comes out, and I'm gonna love it to death and play it, and, you know, it'll probably be my obsession for the month it comes out, but, like, I can just, like, it'll get here when it gets here, and, like, I feel like the hype machine is getting a little too artificial for its own good at this point. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there was a time when Persona was my favorite thing ever, and as I've gotten, sicker with the spin-offs, and I like mainline a lot more, so I'm more hyped for Apocalypse than I am Persona 5 at this point.
Same.
But I felt that same, like, when Persona 5 was still just being talked about, I felt that, like, I don't really care. But then there was that one trailer, and I was like, oh, actually, I'm super excited. So I feel like I feel like it's just this weird point where it's like, at this point, I'm like, I don't really care if they show them the countdown, but if they show something cool, it'll probably get me excited again because I'm a chill and I'm
Yeah,
have no
like
self-respect.
if they show like cool trailers and like they show some like more gameplay stuff and all that, like I'm gonna or like even more story details, I'm gonna be all over that. But just like I think the whole like drip like we're gonna feed you just enough and it's good like I feel like that worked really well for them for like that first year or two, and just as that's gone on, I've just kind of been a little bit more fed up with it than actually interested, and I think a lot of people are kind of burnt out just because of that marketing. And I feel like too the fact that it got delayed a couple times definitely.
Yeah.
I
If it had
think
come out in 2014, the drip feeding would have been okay.
it would have been one of. I think people would say like that was one of the best marketing like things for a game ever. If that had
Yeah.
kept on track, but just the fact that it's been. I actually know a lot of people who are like way bigger Persona fans than I am that have been kind of upset, if not just like kind of actually angry with how it's been handled, and I feel bad for those people because I honest to God can't say that they're wrong, like it
Yeah.
has to be for the people that really care. Like I care a lot about Persona. Like I'm sure that game is going to be one of my favorite games of that year when it comes out, maybe even number 1 depending on the other games released at the time, but like yeah, like just the way they've been trickling out so slowly, like I can see why people have been mad, especially too because that game has not had the smoothest of development. It seems like they're taking their sweet time with it, which it'll lead to a better product, I'm sure, in the long run, but it can be frustrating for people that are really excited and want to get their hands on it like now, so
It's definitely one of those things though where like, man, when the game comes out and like a couple months after the game's released, no one's gonna remember being frustrated at the
yep,
development ads and stuff.
yeah, and I
Like
totally agree with
this is a
that.
problem that's only relevant right now. Now, once the game actually comes out, as long as it lives up to your expectations, you're not even gonna remember that you were frustrated.
Yeah, I'm actually that's one thing I actually I've kind of, and I've said this before on numerous podcasts and stuff. I kind of feel like when Persona 5 comes out, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that maybe hyped it a little too like because a lot of people really expect this like to just be beyond like savior of video games sort of thing, and I feel like it's going to be a really solid another Persona on the level of 3 and 4, but I feel like there's a lot of people that expect way more than it can possibly ever deliver as just a video game, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna be curious to see how that like because that's kind of my thing. Like if it's about the same level as 3 or 4, maybe a little bit better, like I'm gonna be super happy with it. But I think there's a lot of people that want as big as a gap between 2 and 3 was, and I don't think they're gonna get it.
Yeah, no, absolutely
Kingdom
not.
Hearts 3, anyone?
Oh,
Oh yeah. Oh, actually, one thing I did want to, I just wanted to mention this, and I want to get it on record. So, this is backtracking super hard, but fuck it, whatever, who cares anymore. So I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm gonna go into Dark Souls 3. Oh, it's gonna have a midway twist like Bloodborne." I never like, I don't know. Did you guys expect that to happen? Because totally went through that game, and I was like, I don't expect there to be a twist. Like they wouldn't do that a second time.
Yeah, no.
Like
no, I didn't expect it.
and there's a few people that I think were actually kind of disappointed that there wasn't a twist, and it's like, is it really a twist if they do it a second time though? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
I definitely feel
Yeah.
like in general there's a lot of oh sorry, you guys were cutting out, so I might have been talking over you.
Oh, just yeah, no, it's fine. Carry on.
I was gonna say I think in general it's a problem that a lot of people have of like they think they know what they want more than what they actually want because like if anyone went into Bloodborne going, "Oh, I really hope this game has a midway twist," it wouldn't have been as effective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's our Dark Souls 3 quota. As our epilogue.
uh, Dark Souls can't escape it.
It was really weird when Cthulhu popped up in that like Banjo-Kazooie fighter pilot game for the Game Boy Advance.
Oh
It
man,
was really
yeah.
weird how he was just showed up at the midway point like that. All right, that was from Matt. Thanks, Matt. This is just a social experiment. It's just a prank, bro. Anyways, um, Okay, so this is from Ultimate Trainer, and so the subject is I just caught my eye because it's really long. It says thoughts on Super Late, not SMT4F/A and Dark Souls 3 to be clear, localizations/re-releases and remasters. And the actual email itself says, recently, a whole wave of localizations for video games have been announced/came out recently, such as the latest edition of Melty Blood, a game that has been highly pirated due to the fact it cost an absurd amount of money since it was only released with an overpriced Blu-ray. Koehime Enbu, another anime fighter, thought never to come out here. The Silver Case remake, which was leaked, which is Suda51's first big break into the games industry. Do you think? Let's see. Do you think they would be too overshadowed by more popular remakes and re-releases such as Uncharted to be successful? Would people be turned off by just the words re-release and remake to be interested in more niche releases such as that? It would be cool to discuss that, etc., etc. I don't feel like remaster re-releases like as a thing really affect people's purchasing of games. Like maybe if they've already bought it, but like I think like say what you will about like the second half of last generation and the first half of this one, just the almost ridiculous amount of HD remasters and updates that have come out for games, and I think financially they've all proven to be pretty successful actually. So I feel like re-releases as a whole, like I think especially for something like Silver whatever it's called, I dropped the email already, but like that Suda51 game, that's always been a game that I've heard about and kind of been interested in just because, you know, I played No More Heroes 1 and 2 and liked them. The podcast fucking named after a No More Heroes song. But yeah, like that's a game where it's like, oh, like I never really had an avenue to pick that up, but I mean, I'm familiar with this guy's more mainstream works, and maybe it'd be neat to see his earlier stuff now that it's being re-released and I can finally grab it. So yeah, I think remakes and re-releases and stuff can definitely compete toe-to-toe with new stuff or like more AAA stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it always comes down to two, like, everything has its own fan base, so, like, I don't necessarily know if the people that would buy, like, something like Melty Blood would necessarily be impacted by the fact that, like, there's an HD collection of something, if I understand the question correctly.
Yeah, or like, yeah, like basically just like, could something that's a re-release or like, I think basically what he's getting at is like, do you think for a lot of the niche stuff that's finally being brought over or re-released and finally being available for a Western audience, do you think that they'll be able to compete and do financially well when there's like do you think that the words re-release or remaster or remake, do you think that kind of draws people attention away from those products, if I'm understanding this correctly?
I don't necessarily think it does, no. People always go where their interests are. I mean, definitely. I mean, when you look at something like Final Fantasy, there's just as much hype around 15 as there is the 7 remake, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like in general, I mean, when you bring up something like Melty Blood, like that's super niche, like that's not going to be a huge seller anyway.
Just reading through the email, I think he does clarify, like, do you think something like a Melty Blood HD can last against something bigger? Like, basically, like, do you think a more niche re-release can go toe-to-toe with, like, a more mainstream re-release? Like, could Uncharted... It's weird to call it Uncharted HD, but could the Uncharted collection go up with like a Melty Blood HD collection? And I think the answer is yes, because I think those are completely two different audiences.
Yeah. Yeah. The niche audience is always going to want the niche games. Like that's just always how it's been.
Yeah, I mean, especially even within like fighting games and stuff. Like there's a market for the like Street Fighter, and there's a market for Melty Blood, and they, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's less so like even the fact that like it's a re-release and stuff, and just like what the game at its core, like who it appeals to and like what the market wants at the time. Like I think back to like the Resident Evil remake apparently financially did not do very well at all, but that also came out at a time when a lot of people were just really sick of tank control Resident Evil. And that's why Resident Evil 4 was so different, because they needed to change or else they just weren't going to sell games anymore. Even though Remake is like, in my opinion and a lot of other people's opinions, one of the greatest survival horror games ever made. But like, it all depends on what people want at the time. Like, I mean, Rock Band 4, from what I've heard, pretty good game, but just like no one gives a shit at this point, you know? Like, it's kind of depends on what people want.
Yeah, that really didn't work out like they wanted it to. They thought that was going to be like the big revival of the genre.
You know, I was really skeptical with that, and like, there's a lot of talk like, yeah, rhythm games might be coming back. I don't.
No.
I think that was such like a core like mid 2000s thing. I could never see it coming back.
Man, I feel weird now that I bought Rock Band 4. Yeah, I did.
Nice.
It's fine. I'll stick to my Project Diva.
Oh, okay. I'll be over here not playing rhythm games.
Yo, Project Diva's awesome. Just giving that a shout out.
I'm terrible at them.
I probably am. I played Osu for a little bit. I was like, this is fun, and then I just kind of stopped. Rhythm games are intense. People don't even realize, though. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, no, oh my god. The harder songs on Project Diva on the higher difficulties are
Yeah, I've seen that
insane.
shit. That looks intense.
Project Diva is the Dark Souls of rhythm games.
Oh.
Oh, all right.
Oh, god damn it. No. Alright. Well, that solves
Where's my
that.
PSP?
Now we have to talk about it and play it. Okay. So yeah, that was from Ultimate Trainer. Yeah. I got no more emails, so we are pretty good. I don't know if I said this for the people at home, but if you want to send in an email to have it read on the show, it's wearefinallyemail@gmail.com. Once again, that is wearefinallyemail@gmail.com, and we'll talk about your question. But we're out of those, so for now, these are all going into the trash, and we can await for next episode where we talk about the latest in Dark Souls and Marvel Cinematic Universe news. Civil War will be out by that point, so that's that. We did it.
Yay.
We totally didn't lose Skype call connection there and had to awkwardly dance around that. So yeah.
Well, it totally fits because we have never ended an episode of this podcast in any manner that is good.
No.
We don't do endings good.
Threes are hard.
Threes are hard. Sixes are hard.
Six is three, but twice, so it's twice as hard. This is the Dark Souls of endings.
Episode 9.
Oh no, fine. We're not getting that far. What the fuck are you saying? No, we'll do it. Maybe someday. But yeah, that's. I guess we ran out of things to talk about. So yeah, I don't know if any of you guys are really doing anything or have anything to plug. Mike, you got any projects or any fun things that you do on the internet, or
Projects on the internet?
yeah, like anything you would like to plug or let everyone know about?
Oh no. I'm me.
Okay, it's all good. Thanks.
He
for
plays Final
listening,
Fantasy
everyone.
14 with me, but I've already attempted to plug that.
Oh. I have a tablet coming in the mail. I guess I'll plug that. I'm looking forward to it. It's the Nexus 7 2013. It'll be fun. It'll be nice. I always kind of thought tablets are dumb just because like they're bigger phones, but not also a phone. But I don't know. I can read things good now. So that'll be cool. I'll put a bunch of emulators on it and just play a bunch of dumb old games that I've already played. So
Yep.
Super Mario World.
oh god, on a touchscreen?
Yeah.
I guess you probably put like a Bluetooth controller on it or something. I don't know. I'll just play SMT1 for like the 50th fucking time on my tablet instead of finishing the LP.
Or you could finally play SMT2, but
No.
oh,
I only play the odd numbered SMT games, okay? Like 1, 3, and 4.
yeah, 1, 3, 4, 4 Apocalypse.
Yeah, 4 Apocalypse is a weird number. I don't know what the... And Strange Journey, that one's in there too. The 3.5.
Yeah. Don't forget If.
Oh, if only. It'll be translated one day. Gotta have faith.
Yeah, I believe in it.
There's a little SMT game that could. All right, I think we've exhausted any sort of quality conversation at this point.
It's cute that you think there was ever any quality conversation.
It's just 2 hours of hot Banjo-Kazooie garbage.
2 hours. My counter says 3.5.
Oh, ooh. All right, night
Wait,
everyone.
Well, our counter says 3.5 minutes because the call is new because of Skype problems.
Listen, I know how to read a clock. Shut up.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Unless you're listening to this in the morning, then shit.
Oh. This is all being captured. I haven't hit the stop recording button.
Oh
yet.
no! I said reading this at first. I'm good at talking.
Oh god. This is the worst.
Please don't put this in, but you can do it
This
if
is
you
how
want.
this is how somebody's starting their day. Just know that.
Yeah.
God.
Anyway,
We tried.
we try.
Okay, hit the stop recording button.
Oh, thank God.
Oh no, it's not stopping the recording. It's
Oh.
still-